Hey, I just got this article actually from my dad from the New York Times, and it's by Ferris Jabber, and it's an excerpt from a book that he wrote called Becoming Earth, How Our Planet Came to Life. And it's a fascinating article, and it really highlights a deeper, figuratively speaking, a deeper understanding of how the Earth is just even more teeming with life than we ever imagined. And he goes to describe how in the depths of the Earth's crust, going down, I don't know how deep, but it seems like even miles, there is a whole world of microbes that are living there and actually comprise what seems to be the vast majority of the biomass of the Earth. And so it's a very well-told story about him going deep into a mine and experiencing just the presence of this weird life, this subterranean life that we're only now starting to understand. So what that reveals to him is, and what he captures in this article and presumably in more detail in his book, is that this kind of life has been instrumental in actually transforming the Earth itself into the habitable Earth that we're privileged to live on, and we ought not to neglect what this amazing quantity and type of life has done in sculpting the Earth ultimately for our benefit. And so that's the main point of the article. And a couple things that I wanted to say about it, and here I'm coming at this from a perspective that I really do believe that the Earth is not just the product of natural forces, natural law, but it actually has been influenced, has been designed in some way. And in my worldview, it's by God. And God has designed this amazing Earth that we find, and there's good reason to believe that that's true. And I think this is just another part of that amazing design. So a couple things that the author points out that I think are of note. One, he marvels at what he calls geographic serendipity. He's talking about the Amazon rainforest and how important the Amazon rainforest is to the survival of life on this planet, and why we're so worried about disrupting that thing. But he uses that to highlight then an analogous thing that these microbes that live in the depths of the Earth have done in terms of crafting the terrain and the mineral content and just so many parameters that turn out to be like critical for life to exist here on the surface, and certainly for advanced life like human beings. And we completely take for granted everything that has been happening over billions of years of the history of the Earth. We take for granted the conditions that we find, due largely in part by this growing recognition that these microbes that permeate the crust have done for us. He goes on to elaborate a little bit more on this geographic serendipity, and he touches very briefly on some of the fine-tuning elements that are essential for life on Earth. Like if we didn't orbit the sun, the star, in the right size and the right age, if we were too close or too far, life wouldn't be possible. If we didn't have a stable atmosphere, liquid water, magnetic field, and the list goes on and on and on. He barely touches on it. And I think that's one of the great arguments for a designer who took all this very improbable conditions and made them all converge in a way that supports life. So layered on top of that fine-tuning of just the physical nature of the Earth and its composition, layered on top of that is the critical role that this simple life has been performing over billions of years. And it turns out that as a result of that life, just amazing things have happened. And that's the bulk of the article. And he points out that the history of life, the evolution of life, has been one of life itself transforming the very terrain in which we live in order that life can flourish. And what an amazing observation that is. For me, what that points out to is just another layer of complexity in this amazing machine that is this planet Earth, with its life on it. And so I suppose you could look at it as I don't know how else you would look at it, frankly. Where he starts going is to start looking at the planet itself as a living being. And I think there's a lot of truth to that because it reflects a lot of the character just on a grand scale, just an immense scale of a living, growing, changing being. And so, and he points out some of the features. He substantiates that with a lot of fact. Here's kind of a quote that maybe highlights this a little bit. Is that, well, let me just read this paragraph. In recent decades, scientific understanding of life's relationship to the planet has been undergoing a major reformation. That's good. Science is always in the process of better understanding and revising old ideas as new data comes in. And contrary to long-standing maxims, life has been a formidable geological force throughout Earth's history, often matching or surpassing the power of glaciers, earthquakes, and volcanoes. Over the past several billion years, all manner of life forms, from microbes to mammoths, have transformed the continents, oceans, and atmospheres, turning a lump of orbiting rock into a world as we've known it. Living creatures are not simply products of inexorable evolutionary processes in their own particular habitats. They are orchestrators of their environments and participants in their own evolution. We and other living creatures are more than inhabitants of the Earth. We are Earth, an outgrowth of its physical structure and an engine in its global cycles. And the evidence for this new paradigm is all around us, although much has been discovered only recently and has yet to permeate public consciousness to the same degree, say, as selfish genes or the microbiome. So this is really an amazing point, and I think it's the heart of the article, that life itself is part of the process that then allows greater life, more advanced life, more complex life to live on this earth. He goes on to, when he makes that observation of the earth itself, not as just a physical substrate on which life plays out its thing, but rather the two are intertwined and play off of each other. And then he brings up, and this is where I think my interpretation of this reality starts deviating a bit from the authors here. He brings up the Gaia hypothesis, which is essentially, he describes the Gaia hypothesis this way. It proposes that all the animate and inanimate elements of Earth are parts and partners of a vast being who in her entirety has the power to maintain our planet as fit and comfortable habitat for life. So the Gaia hypothesis starts to personify and attribute to the Earth, I would say, anthropomorphic qualities. And even in the description, it's referring to the Earth as a her, a being, and in the background is the idea that the Earth is in some way striving towards blossoming, and that part of what we're discovering is just the complexity of that whole process. And so what are we to make of this anthropomorphizing of the Earth system as we learn more and more about its complexity? Well, the way I see this is a little bit different, and it's not personifying Earth as a living and conscious and purposeful agent that is striving towards just the flourishing of life, but rather all of these elements just this scream to me that yes, there is a person, there is an agency, but it's not the Earth itself. It's the designer who, in the same way that we're discovering this fine-tuning of the Earth and this design in the Earth, we continue to discover fine-tuning and design in the universe itself, such that even chemistry could exist, or even galaxies could exist, even a planet like ours could exist. And the more we learn about how interdependent all of these parameters are, the more astounding it is. And it's natural to kind of start attributing to the very, the Earth and the galaxy as more like a living conscious being that we just don't understand. It's understandable that we would do that because it seems It seems purposeful in the design that we find. But again, I would say that when we place that agency and anthropomorphizing on the earth itself, we're putting it in the wrong place. Rather, I think that this is the handiwork of a designer who is much greater than, is transcendent from all of this and has actually the power to bring anything into being. The very fact that the universe exists needs an explanation for its existence. What is it that answers the question, why is there something rather than nothing? And so I think as we take a more all-encompassing view, the argument for the features that we see and the amazing design that we see and the interdependency of which, if anything went wrong, we would not exist as the result of a purposeful agent, but that purposeful agent isn't the thing itself. It's something transcendent, and I call that God. Okay, so I think it's really interesting too. Again, so often these kind of articles are tantalizing because they touch on these themes of fine-tuning and design and stuff, but they shy away from it at the last minute. Let me give you an example. Let's see, later in the article, he marvels at the power of these amazing little critters living in the Earth's crust, in their power to create an amazing diversity of chemical elements, mineral elements that we otherwise wouldn't have. And he compares the mineral content and the diversity of the mineral content on Earth to a place like Mars or Mercury, I can't remember, and makes this observation. And I think this is a critical point. He says that the probability of a planet in the universe possessing the same type of mineral species as we do here as a result of the work of these microbes over eons of time, the probability of finding another planet that has a similar composition is 1 in 10 to the 322. Now, I always take these numbers with a bit of a grain of salt. Why is it 10 to the 322nd and not 321st? Do we really know? The point I take away is 1 in 10 to the almost anything in the hundreds is such a small probability that it might as well be 0. Once you get beyond a certain point, then you're essentially saying there's 0 chance of this happening. And he goes on to point out that since there are only an estimated 10 to the 25 Earth-like planets in the universe, then the probability of finding another Earth-like planet that has the mineral composition that Earth does is essentially 0. Okay, and this mineral diversity, turns out it's very critical for life on Earth. So this is the whole point: is that the presence of life is part of the whole picture that then generates the conditions for more advanced life, and that is, from a scientific perspective, the probability of all these things working together is just one more element that is probabilistically impossible to explain by natural causes and just random. We're just lucky. So what is a better conclusion? A better conclusion is that actually an intelligent designer with purpose in mind created the Earth like a designer would design a watch or an iPhone. I think an iPhone is a better example these days of all of the interdependent things that go on to make that thing function in the way that it does for a purpose. This is what we find increasingly so, and this is just one more discovery that adds like a huge layer of design and complexity and interdependency in order to support life as we now find it. So I'll just wrap up just by saying, I applaud these kind of discoveries. I'm excited about them, but I wonder why we shy away so easily from what seems to me increasingly an obvious conclusion. Rather than attribute what we find by personifying the thing itself and attributing to it agency and purpose and direction, I think it makes just way more sense to say, no, there's an external designer, the transcendent designer, who not only did this on Earth, but did it, in the creation of the universe and all the fine-tuning we see there. So that's my opinion. That's my read. I hope it sounds reasonable and not just like a wacky religious superstition, because that's not what I want it to be. There's a lot more I could say about this, and I would urge the readers of this article to have your antennas wide open for presuppositions and anthropomorphizing, where I think it's a stretch. I think it's great in its marvel of what we find, but ultimately, again, from my perspective, we human beings tend to focus our worship onto the creation rather than the creator. One reason I believe that Scripture is the Word of God is because it precisely describes human nature, and this is what we do. And as we, there's hints of that in this article that I think we want to at least be aware of happening, and not just let it wash over us unobserved. Finally, I would say that one slightly disappointing part of this article is that the author easily conflates Darwinian evolution with the origin of life, and you see that all the time in the literature, where when we talk about evolution, the implication is that Darwinian evolution encompasses not only speciation and the diversity of life, but also explains the origin of life, which is not true. Those are two different things. But pay attention to the article where it seems like he conflates that. And explaining the origin of life in the first place, let alone Darwinian evolution after life begins, remains a big stumper. And the more we study what it takes to go from non-life to life, in the same way that we study the earth, realizing what it takes to be able to create an environment in which human beings can live, let alone simple creatures, the more we study the complexity of the origin of life, the more of a stumper that is. And again, I think that's a huge argument in support of there had to be an originator for life itself. How did we get from non-life to life? How did the universe come into being? How did the universe, why is there something rather than nothing? These are all thoughtfully answered as we look at the notion of a transcendent God as the better answer. So anyway, this probably went on way too long, but I'll leave it at that, and look forward to any comments you might have, and you can put them below. All right, thanks.